Hello, welcome back to my channel. It is me, Abigail Grace, or Abby, and today I am filming belatedly late. I'm late on getting this video filmed and uploaded, so that's my bad. Also, let me see if this will help belating me less like harsh. I don't know if that's helpful or not. Whatever. I'm feeling pale and kind of Edward Cullen-y this morning with this weather. It's April. Why is it 45? It's supposed to be sunny and 70. Anyway, as I said, this video is late getting to you. I am sorry. That's on me. I was traveling and I forgot to pre-film this before I went out of town. So the New York City vlog that you probably haven't seen yet, it might be coming next. I was out of town in New York and I didn't get around to filming this. So with that being said, we're gonna go ahead and talk about all of the books that I read in March. I have the ones that I have physical copies of here next to me, and then I obviously brought my Kindle as a physical representation of the books that I read on my Kindle. So we'll go through those as well. As always, I read way too much, and a lot of the books that I read on my Kindle were average, and I'm here to tell you whether you should read them or not. So let's get into it. First, we're gonna start with Picking Daisies on Sundays. This was so cute. This was just straight up romance, but like sweet, wholesome romance. It is set in New York City. It's like friends to like strangers to lovers, but there's like some fake dating thrown in there. It was so cute, so sweet. And I loved Levi. He's the main guy in this and he speaks French. It was so dreamy. And this was like a second Friends to Lovers book that I had read recently, and now I'm like on a Friends to Lovers kick because it's just so wholesome and sweet, and I feel like it's so realistic, and I feel like we need it more. So I highly recommend this one. I gave this one 5 stars. Hopefully those will stay over there. We'll see. Next, I read The Fake Mate by Lana Ferguson. You might be thinking, Abby, didn't you read that in February? And you'd be right. I did, but I also reread it in March. I went to the beach and I was like, you know, I just want to read some fun, lighthearted something. And I had reread Bride as well. So this got picked up and I'm so happy I re-picked it back up. I do have this in my Goodreads as a 4 stars, but it's definitely like 4.5. The fact that I reread it the month after I read it for the first time is telling of how much I enjoyed this. It's shifter romance. I was loving that and still love it. So I recommend this. If you read Bride and liked it, this is a little bit more spicy and a little bit more true Omega-verse than Bride was and is. So if you liked it and you want to get a little bit more into it, then I recommend The Fake Mate. Next, I have another reread, and that is Beach Read by Emily Henry. As I said, I was at the beach, and what better time to reread one of my favorite books of all time than when I'm at the beach. This is like, it's interesting because it's titled Beach Read, but it's not like Florida beachy, it's Michigan beach. So it's not super like sunny and summery, but it is truly like Emily Henry can do no wrong in my eyes. Even People We Meet on Vacation, which is not my favorite, is still a good book. And this is 5 stars. I have reread it now 3 times and I love it every time. I cry every time. January and Gus are perfect to me. And I dream about Gus. He's everything. So, reread that one. Next, I read Falling Hard for the Royal Guard. I think I just randomly saw someone maybe on Goodreads had read this, someone I follow on Goodreads, because I love Goodreads. It's like my favorite social media. Anyway, I think it was a new release or something like that. And I love red, white, and royal blue. And I love, this is not quite the same, but I love boyfriend material and husband material. And something about just like the British vibes I love. They are not, she's not, neither of them are like royalty, which makes it more similar to like boyfriend or husband material. But the main guy is a royal guard, and it's just so good and sweet. And like the the FMC, Maggie is so relatable and just like, she's just your everyday girl. And she's going through it, and I'm glad she got her happily ever after. I did end up giving this one 4 stars. Okay, now we're entering my arc era. I did read like, I believe 4 or 5 arcs in March, and the first one that I read was Heir Apparently by Kara McDowell. This is a second in a series, and I did not read the first one, but I personally felt fine going into it not having read the first one. I read the summary or the synopsis of the first one, and going into the second one, I didn't feel like I was missing out on a lot. But that being said, I would generally recommend reading the first one before you read a second one in a series, even if they're, because this is not like interconnected standalones. This is like truly a series. It's the same main characters in the first book and in the second book. And there is kind of a weird plot line. I read it after I read this one because I was like, ooh, I'm really into this like British aristocracy vibe. And so Heir Apparently, it fit the bill. He's the new king of England. And in the first book, they're like trying to get to a bunker because there's like supposed to be a comet coming towards the earth. And so the whole thing is like apocalypse themed. Like the series is called The Prince and the Apocalypse. So the first one is like them trying to get to a bunker, the 2 main characters, and they like kind of fall in love along the way. And this one, they've now like separated. He's now the king, and she's like just trying to go to school and live a normal life, but can't stop thinking about him. And it turns out that they might have accidentally gotten married. There's like all this stuff that keeps going wrong. And similar to like the first one with like the apocalypse theme, they're in a plane crash. They're like stranded. Like things just keep going wrong. So there's kind of that action adventure aspect of it, which was kind of unexpected, but I actually loved this and flew through it. And because I read ARC, I wrote like a more fleshed out review on Goodreads. And Ren and Theo are the 2 main characters. I'm so glad they got like a happily ever after, because based on how the first book ends and where this second one picks up, it's just, you know that they both deserve a happily ever after, whether that's by themselves or together. I'm just glad they got a happily ever after. And the supporting cast was also so good. I loved seeing all of the supporting cast. So anyway, 4 stars for Heir Apparently. Next, also while at the beach, I started Fate Breaker by Victoria Aveyard. This is the final book in the Realm Breaker trilogy. That's her like YA. It's kind of like feels like Lord of the Rings vibes. It's like epic journeys. There's a villain love story. It's very political. And it's not super like romantasy vibes. It's definitely more like true fantasy. And I loved Red Queen. And so I had read the first 2 in this series probably like 2 years ago, and was so glad to finally get this one. It just released. So I was very excited to pick this one up and continue that world. And I ended up giving this one 4 stars. I do think as I've gotten older, like YA fantasy and like I still love YA romance, but I think YA fantasy, something about it just, it feels very like simple at times, and I felt that sometimes in this. So I ended up giving this one 4 stars. All right, next I read on my Kindle The Ick Factor by Morgan Elizabeth. This is the final book in the like Seasons of Revenge interconnected standalone, and I had read one of the other books in that like series and thought it was okay, and I knew that this one was coming out and it was fake dating or fake marriage, something along those lines, fake engagement, and I like that trope, and so I was like, I might as well like pick it up, even though I haven't read all the other books in this series. Like the other one was okay, so I did pick this one up, and I would say okay is the rating. It's 3 stars. It's definitely spicy, and that's like the main thing that's sticking to my mind about it. Like because this is like the Seasons of Revenge, there's like corporate espionage happening, and they're like trying to suss out who's doing it, what happened. So there's like that element of it. But overall, it's a 3 stars for me. Next, I read Swift and Saddled. I read this for my cowboy romance video, and I also read the next few books for that video. So if you have not watched that video, go watch it. I talk all about these books in that video. So I'm just gonna kind of say this is a new release. It's the second in the Rebel Blue Ranch series. The first one was Done and Dusted, and the third one actually comes out later this year, which I'm so excited about. So Swift and Saddled, I love these covers. Like they're truly beautiful, and I ended up giving this one 4 stars. It was good. It felt kind of like cookie cutter at times, like let's use these tropes and put them in. But honestly, Wes was such a dreamy cowboy protagonist. I love him. I would marry him in a heartbeat. So he's a great MMC, and I'm excited to keep reading the other books in this world. Oh, the next arc that I read in my arc journey was Summers at the Saint. I started this also while I was at the beach, I believe, but did not finish it while I was there. I finished it once I got home. And this is the Mary Kay Andrews arc. I have read several of her books. I have not read all of them. She has a huge back catalog, and I would just describe her books as like mom beach reads. Like it's something my mom would totally love. There's always like a little bit of a mystery that's being solved, and there's a little bit of a romance, but it's definitely not like a romance book. They're always like beachy themed. This one's there's all these like different storylines that are happening. It kind of reminds me of like Valentine's Day or Love Actually, or one of those like ensemble cast performances where there's so many different like timelines happening or storylines happening, and then in the end they all like kind of come together, and like the mystery gets solved, everything concludes and like comes together in a really cool way, which I loved in this book. The setting was amazing, and I really enjoyed it. So I think if you're looking for like a fun beach read, I would pick up a Mary Kay Andrews book, and this one comes out soon, so maybe keep your eye out for it, because I enjoyed it and I gave it 4 stars. Next, I read The Brightest Light of Sunshine. This is the first in a series of 3. I also read the second one in this like series this month, but The Brightest Light of Sunshine is age gap, which is why I initially picked it up. It's I believe an 8-year age gap, which is amazing. He's like a tattoo artist, but it's he falls first. She and this is a trigger warning, she is a victim of SA and is kind of recovered from it, but is more timid, and it's like strangers to friends to lovers. It was really sweet, but I ended up giving this one 3 stars. It's a romance. Next is one of the other books that I read from a cowboy romance, and that would be Broken Vow, which is the 5th in the Brutal Birthright series, which is in itself a mafia romance, but Broken Vow has the added twist of being a cowboy mafia romance, which was so fun and so spicy. I loved our main character. I cannot remember his name. Rylan, such a good MMC. It's like bodyguard, because she's like, someone's trying to kill her because her family's mafia. He is like in charge of protecting her and ends up taking her to his like family ranch in Tennessee, where he's like all in that cowboy moment. And it was good, it was spicy, it was sexy. I gave it 3 stars. Next, I read Lynn Painter's new release, Happily Never After. This is her new adult romance. So she has the second book in Better Than the Movies coming out, which is a YA book that's coming out later this year. This is her adult one. This is not in a series. And basically, as you can tell on the front, these 2 people are objecting at a wedding, and that's basically the whole premise. The main character, Sophie, she has her wedding interrupted by an objector, and that is Max. And through that, they kind of like become friends and start going to weddings together to object at weddings. And it was so fun, so sweet. It was very short, fast read. You can always count on Lynn Painter to have amazing banter, and I think I like her YA stuff more than her adult stuff, but I will always buy her stuff and I will always recommend it. So I gave this one 4 stars, but I always recommend Lynn Painter. Okay, I had to change the battery on my camera really fast, but we're back and we're gonna talk about more books. This is the final book that I read for my cowboy romance video. I read 13 Candles by Sienna Judd. This is a single dad age gap, which I love. And this man is cowboy perfection. His daughter has Down syndrome, and the FMC, she is her like special ed teacher, and that's how they meet. He is literally the best dad ever, and it's just so sweet, spicy, sexy, and like just wholesome of the family aspect. And then there's the spicy, sexy part of like the sex part. So I recommend. I did give it 3 stars, but it's Abby approved of the single dad age gap. So next, I read At First Sight by Olivia Dade. This was an Afterlight exclusive like subscription that I got. So this is the normal cover, I believe, but the inside has these illustrations. The edges are sprayed, and then the cover is like what the house looks like. So the whole premise is that there's 2 like row townhouses, and there was like a little space in between them, and someone like out of spite built a like very narrow house in between the 2 houses. So that was called like the spite house, and this is a real thing, but this is a fictionalized city and version of it. But basically our FMC, she is supposed to marry one brother, and the other brother convinces him to break it off with her after she had bought the house, as the spite house, as a gift to the younger brother who she was supposed to marry, because the 2 brothers live in the houses, and she bought the spite house and was gonna give it as a gift to her intended fiance. And when they break up, now she owns this house in between the 2 brothers, and she does not want to be there, but she spent all her money on it and quit her job to move there, and now she has to stick it out. And basically the older brother although she hates him initially, is like tries to help her. She does struggle with depression, and that's like kind of a main plot point for her. So if that's triggering or causes any issues, maybe read some trigger warnings before, but I do think it was really well done, and I would not have picked it up if I hadn't gotten it in my subscription, and I ended up giving it 4 stars. Next, I read The Darkest Corner of the Heart, which is the second in the Brightest Light series. This one is also age gap. It's a 10-year age gap. She is a ballerina who gets injured, and he is her physical therapist. And similarly to the Brightest Light book, they cover some difficult topics. So maybe read trigger warnings before you read either of those. Definitely read trigger warnings before you read the first one, but also maybe for the second one. But I'm a sucker for age gap, and after I read the first one, this book follows like the daughter / younger sister of the couple in the first book, so they're still in it kind of heavily. So I'm excited. I think it's going to be good. And the third book in this one is also age gap, like Licinia, I believe is how you pronounce her name. She writes age gap, and the next one I think is even more of an age gap. I think it's like 12 years. So I'm excited for it, even though I gave both of the first 2 books in the series 3 stars. Not because I didn't enjoy them, just like they didn't. 3 stars isn't bad. Like, I still enjoyed it. I will read the next book in the series, but I do think it didn't have that special something, you know, that could give it to 4 or even 5. It's just a pretty typical romance book besides that. Then I read One Night Only by Catherine Walsh, and this sent me into my Irishman era. I'm also listening to the audiobook of Butcher and Blackbird, which I have not finished yet, but the narrator for the male part is Irish. It is so good. Like, the Irish accent is everything. But basically the premise for this is it starts out, she's waking up after a one night stand, and she basically is like, sorry, you gotta leave. Like, we're not gonna continue. Like, this is a one night stand. So he leaves, and then she flies to Ireland because her best friend is getting married and she's the maid of honor. Turns out the guy she had a one night stand with is the brother of her best friend's fiance, so he's the best man, and they have to spend this like long week together in Ireland. So obviously he's Irish, and it was really good and funny and like sexy and just lighthearted. I ended up giving it 4 stars. It was like the first romance book that I'd read in like a while that had me just like giggling and kicking my feet. Not in a while. Some of these other books I had, but like it wasn't trying to be more than it needed to be. That's the thing about like the Brightest Light series that I just talked about. It covered such like deep topics. I was like, I'm reading these for the age gap romance. I don't need all this other stuff. Some people probably like that, but that's not what I'm going to a Kindle Unlimited series that I'm reading on my Not Smut Kindle for. I'm going for the romance, and that's what I want. So I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. And she has a ton of other books, and I believe they all have like an Irish setting, or like the characters are Irish. So they're on my list. Next, I did DNF, A Tempest of Tea, which I didn't even grab out. I put it back on my TBR. I don't know. I just wasn't feeling it. Not because it was bad. It's Arthurian. It's an Arthurian legend. Like, it's a retelling of King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table, and there's vampires. It's also giving Six of Crows, but with vampires. I don't know. And I like those things, but I just couldn't get into it, and I decided not to force myself to finish it, so I did DNF it. Next, I read The Arc for Primetime Romance by Kate Robb. I read This Spells Love. It was a Book of the Month book in the fall, maybe like November or December, and I loved it. I gave it 5 stars, and I also loved Primetime Romance and gave it 5 stars. I am a Kate Robb convert. This Spells Love was her debut novel, and so this is her sophomore novel. and I'm so excited for it to come out. I don't think it comes out until September, but be on the lookout for when it does. The female main character was so relatable, and the like male lead was like swoon worthy. He was everything, and I like was rooting for them from the very beginning, even before they like kind of knew what was going on between them. I was rooting for them. It kind of has a weird like magical element, like similarly to This Spells Love. It's not like a witchy rom-com, like a Halloween theme. It's just like there's magical elements. Like the main premise is she and this guy, she makes a wish and they get transported into the like into the world of her favorite like sitcom, which is kind of like Gilmore Girls. So they get transferred to basically like Stars Hollow, and now they're main characters, and she thought that that's what she wanted, this like simple, easy like sitcom life, but it turns out that that's like not what she wanted, and it wasn't fulfilling. It was so good. Like the way the Kate talked about the FMC and like the struggle she was going through, it was like very relatable and personable. I highly recommend. 5 stars. Next, I read Forget Me Not by Julie Soto. This I know has been out for a while, and Julie Soto actually has another book coming out, which I have the ARC for, and I'm very excited to read. And this has a blurb on the back from Abby Jimenez, and I think this reminds me of an Abby Jimenez book and all the things that I love about it. The main character, Amma, is a wedding planner, and the male counterpart is a florist, and it's basically like told from her point of view, which is now in his in the past. They had like dated in the past and are now broken up and now have to work together on a wedding, and he is so dreamy and like soft-spoken. Like I loved him. He was such a good book boyfriend, and I'm adding him to the repertoire in my mind. I also love this cover. I thought his like tattoos, everything was just so good. So if you're looking for a good like rom-com, I would recommend this one, and I'm excited to read her new book. So I gave this one 4 stars. Next, I read Pretty Rings and Broken Things, which is a billionaire romance. It's marriage of convenience, or fake marriage of convenience. It was good. It was a romance. It was a billionaire romance, which I do love. It's Kat Singleton. I read maybe something else by her and was like, oh sure, so picked it up. It was fine. It was 3 stars. Next, I DNF'd Papers Don't Lie. It was just not for me. The writing was bad. I think I got like 25% through, and I was like, I can't bring myself to finish this. I have to DNF it. So I did. Then I read The Women by Kristen Hanna. If you follow me on TikTok or my bookstagram, which are always linked down below, you would have seen me bawling, crying, finishing this book. I will say I read probably 30% of it and listened to 70% of it. The narrator was very good. It was very well done, so I definitely recommend the audiobook version. But this was so good. Easily 5 stars for me. I have not read any of Kristen Hanna's other stuff, and now I definitely want to pick it up. It's set during the Vietnam War. It follows our main character, Frankie. She is a nurse in the Vietnam War, and it follows her like in war, and then her coming back and dealing with the backlash of the Vietnam War and dealing with PTSD, but not knowing how, because she was a woman and no one recognized her as being in Vietnam at all or having served. And it was really, really good. I could tell Kristen Hanna did so much research, spent so much time on it, and I could talk about this forever. It was easily 5 stars, and I would definitely recommend it to anyone. So check this one out. Then I go through a string of just reading books on my Kindle for the rest of the month. That was the last physical book that I had. So next I read The Traitor Queen, which is the second in the like Bridge Kingdom series. And I actually just saw Destiny Sidwell read the first book for her, one of her videos, and she enjoyed the first book. I also enjoyed the first book. The second one was also very good. I have, as you can tell, barely read any fantasy this month. I read one fantasy book because spring is not really fantasy vibes for me. Like, spring is romance. So I read so much romance, and I'm actually kind of now sick of romance. I'm ready to mix it up a little bit again. So I read The Traitor Queen. It was very good. It's a second in a series, so I don't feel like I can really talk about what the plot line is because I don't want to spoil it, but I would recommend the series. And there is, I believe, 2 more. I think the third one is called The Inadequate Heir, and it's on Kindle Unlimited. They're all on Kindle Unlimited, and I do have that one downloaded and on deck to read very soon. But I gave The Traitor Queen 4 stars. Next, I read another arc I got and was very fortunate to receive the arc of Wild Love by Elsie Silver. I love Elsie Silver. I talked about her a ton in my cowboy romance video, but I would not classify Wild Love as a cowboy romance. It's definitely just small town romance, and apparently the whole series follows single dads. So obviously he's a single dad, and this is his best friend's sister or brother's best friend, depending on which way you're looking at it. And Ford Grant is such a good book boyfriend. He's such a cinnamon roll. He falls first, he falls harder. It's so good. I can't wait to like see more of the Rose Hill people in the future series. So definitely be on the lookout for that. I believe it comes out in like the next week, maybe next Tuesday. So it's coming to a bookstore near you. You should check it out. Next, I read Good Game by Megan Madison Fox. This was fine. It was a streamer romance. He's a streamer, a video game streamer, and he's like masked, so no one knows who he is. It was spicy. That's what I'll say about it. It was fine. It's a series. I don't think I'll read the rest of them. I gave it 3 stars. No, I gave it 2 stars. Maybe this is for you, but it wasn't for me. And then finally, I read one more arc this month, and that is The Book Swap by Tessa Bickers. And this book doesn't come out until September as well, as Primetime Romance, but it was good. It was 5 stars. I cried. I'll insert the picture here. I was on the plane flying home from New York, and it had been a long day, granted, but it was really good. And like, the main premise of this book is that the 2 main characters are like estranged. They were friends in high school, and then something happened that we don't really know what, and now they're enemies basically. And you see both of their points of views, but they start communicating unknowingly with each other by swapping books in a community library. So one of those like little libraries where you like put in a book and you can take out a book. And she leaves a book with a bunch of notes, and he reads it and responds to a bunch of them and then puts it back and is like, now pick up this one. And they start swapping books back and forth. And eventually he comes to realize who it is. And when she finds out, is devastated. There's a lot of other plot points that our FMC is clearly struggling. She needs help, and her story is so good. And the way that she kind of is redeemed and how everything comes together is so good. The sister is honestly one of my favorite characters. I loved her. She was such a good sister, and like the relationship between them was like a great representation of sisterhood. So with that being said, that was 5 stars, and I would highly recommend when that comes out that you check it out. And I can't wait to get the physical copy and put it on my shelf. So those are all of the books that I read in March. I can't wait to see what I get up to in April. It's already several days into April because I'm late filming this, and I've already read a few good books. So I can't wait to see you in my next video, and I'll catch up with you then. Bye.